March 14th, 2024 Public Works Board to order. It's Pi Day. Roll call, please.
Mr. Picard?
Here.
Mr. White? Mr. Waters?
Here.
Mr. Beagle? Ms. Schmager?
Here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Polachek informed staff that he was unable to attend tonight.
Okay, next on the agenda is correction and/or approval of the minutes of December 14th, 2023 and February 15th, 2024. Anybody wish to make a motion for one or both?
They look good. Do you want a motion?
Yeah.
Motion to accept the minutes for December 14, 2023 and February 15, 2024.
I second.
We have a motion and second to approve the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, item 4, questions and public comment. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 5, Director's Report.
Okay, a lot has happened since we last met. So I'm going to include some items that have happened over February and March as well. If you could pull up the slides, Dave. And we'll start with electric. That's where a lot of activity has been. On the map, you'll see much of what we've done is centered on services installations on the other side of the lake and then to the north. And then over the last few weeks, we've had a couple of power outages that I'm going to discuss as well. Slide. Slide. So on Shorewood Hills Drive, we, for a number of new residences, we're installing services. This is a pad-mounted transformer to one resident on the lake. Slide. And then to the north, is at Shore Drive. We had some secondary lines going to two different residences, and back in the day, they installed transformers for each individual home, which is unnecessary. But this particular home, their utility pole was failing. There was a considerable crack and it was about to collapse. So we came in and replaced a pole and moved the transformer off of this pole and put one there. Slide. So this is Austin up on the pole. He's removing eventually this pole here and this transformer, and he's installing a new line and a new pole and the down line there. And hold please. As is typical, we're getting rid of this transformer, but whenever we have someone up on the pole, we have a groundman down on the ground watching over this. So this is Luke and TJ are up on the line running the new line with the new pole. Slide. Then, on the 3rd of this month, we had a high windstorm on a Sunday. This created some down secondary lines. The biggest one was on Madison Street between Pleasant and Prospect. We had to do a full road closure. Slide. And what had happened was, for this resident here and another one off, the tree came down. I'll show you a better slide of it, but it knocked down their service line, which put a great deal of stress on our secondary line from this pole. So we had to, as soon as we arrived, cut this line and then reinstall everything. Slide. This was the tree that came down. There was the original pole was here. This pulled on the line and snapped this pole in half. Well, not in half, but near the base. Hold, please. So we come in. There is a tree crew removing that tree, and then we remove the existing pole, which is lying there. And then we started to auger in order to install our new pole. Next. And this is the crew using the digger and boom to put the new pole in place. Next. And here they're just installing it. Next. And then Lucas goes up and starts running the new wire. And eventually we made the connections for the service for this house and this house. Next. Second power outage. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question. Just out of curiosity, how long did that take from the time the tree went down? Because you're working at night, so.
Yes.
That's impressive.
It was. We are very fortunate now. We have 4 professional linemen. They all are highly qualified and know what they're doing. They're gelling as a team. So things did go very quickly. We've been setting up the department since I got here to be a quick response team with our equipment and that. So yes, things last about 4 hours total, I believe. So,
Great job.
yeah. Our second power outage happened last week on the 6th, and it was a little unusual. This is our Tiernina substation. Next. And, well, it's a little hard to describe. We had, when we arrived, well, immediately we found out where the power outage happened, and when we arrived, we discovered a red-tailed hawk on the ground that was very dazed and a dead squirrel. And we started to piece things together. Next slide, please. The red-tailed hawk was alive, but he was very dazed and possibly blind after the outage that he witnessed. But he had perched himself up on this line with a squirrel that he caught. Now, somehow either the squirrel was still alive, but it broke free and fell right at this connection here between the bus and the insulator. And what this created was a fault to the ground. So unfortunately, the squirrel did not survive. If you're squeamish, I'm about to show a picture of it. You might want to close your eyes. But next. It was right here where this connection, or the disconnect happened, or the fault, I'm sorry. And Austin immediately, once the team showed up and they started to disconnect all the breakers, then Austin pulled the switches on all these, and what the problem was this insulator right here. I actually brought it.
I like props.
Piece missing.
So you'll see that the squirrel, when he landed on that connection, I'll hold that slide well. He basically created a fault, and it traveled through the fins and busted the top one, and that's what created the outage right there. And you can see the charring on it as well.
On the side.
So hold there, please. And basically, this was a bit of a longer process, and again, I'm glad we had the professionals that we do. Whenever I'm in the substation, I'm very nervous about what I'm touching, because everything's metal, and, you know, if you touch the wrong wire or the wrong box, you could get hurt. But they had to disconnect the breakers, and then Austin went to work, but it was time-consuming. Next. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the last slide in that. It took us, I don't know, the power's out for about 4 hours. Does that sound right? There was a less than that. Yeah. It went well, but
Still great.
there was a lot of people complaining. That was one of our bigger challenges, was trying to ignore our phones while we're doing the work, but still we're trying to keep everyone updated. So, but it was taken care of. The squirrel did not survive, like I said, unfortunately, but the hawk did. So
Did the hawk fly off?
he did, yes. So. Then, as is typical in the winter months, we do a lot of inventory. And this is the light and water building. Next. So we have to itemize everything again, just take stock, especially for Dwayne's PSC report. Well, it's got your name on it this year. Next. Yes, this is just the crew in our, when things get a little slower in the winter. These are the things we concentrate on, and it's essential that we do this. So, next. Something else that is essential is clearing and grubbing. And this took place for a period of about 2 weeks. And this was down to the southeast, going into the Glacier Drumlin Trail. And the next slide, I'll show you why it gets critical. Next. So what can happen here? For one, all the underbrush can complicate getting access to the poles, but it also can create a fire danger. Next. When you see that underbrush and the understory starts getting that high, if that were to catch fire, then it reaches our lines. So this is becoming a priority. We've knocked a lot of the danger areas out within that 2-week span, but there's still some areas in Lake Mills we're going to have to focus on in order to eliminate such a thick understory. Next. So we had snow since we last met. Seems a while ago, but we did have, as you know, 2 significant snowfalls consecutively within 48 hours of each other. And things went well, in my opinion. We were short crew, but fortunately 2 members of our wastewater department were very well-qualified plow drivers, and they filled in. So we went in about 3 cycles for plowing. Sir? Oh. Your typical, in order to circuit through the entire city and get all the streets, takes us about 9 hours. Then once you get through that, you then focus on cleaning up the intersections and addressing any salting, extra salting that we need to do. Next.
So a question.
Yes.
On a heavy snow, do you concentrate on the main roads more and then do all the small roads, the residential roads later?
Yeah. If it's a typical snowfall, we go through your typical routes. All 8 trucks will be out. But like you just said, if we do have possible emergency situations, we focus on emergency routes first. What route, to hospitals, police stations, and that. And then we focus on the main thoroughfares. So. But then the next few days, weeks actually, we focus on snow removal. And that's the bigger operation. But when we're plowing everything, then the next day we need to focus on getting rid of a lot of that snow out of parking lots and such. And so we dedicate a lot of time and material to that. Next. And next. And this is on Lakeshore Drive. Next. Next. Street department is also then, since the snow came and left, now we're worried about thaw and the spring rains. So we've spent a lot of time on clearing our drainage network. Next. This becomes important in areas like this. If we start getting heavy rains, then I want to make sure that water has a place to go as it's running off. So we focus on these drainage ditches, on the inlets, the storm inlets. We're opening them up, making sure there's no clogs. And this occupies the entire department's time for weeks. Here they did a lot of clearing and grubbing as well, the street department did. And that's just haul hand labor work mostly. So next. And so our operator here is just skimming the side ditches, making sure we have enough width so we can hold more capacity. Next. And then moving to wastewater. Our big story here was we had a force main break down on Ferry Drive. Next. Next. And hold here, please. So, force mains are delivering sewage under pressure from low spots up to where they can get into a gravity draining system. We had a force main here, a 6-inch ductile iron that broke right at about that point. Fortunately, our street department was out on that road early in the morning, and so they saw this coming up, because why this can become an issue is you see we have our storm drains right here going into the lake. We do not believe there was enough volume that directly got into the lake. It definitely got into the storm pipe. And so with the rains, some of that did get into the lake, but we believe it was less than 50 gallons. So we caught a break with the fact that it was found so quickly. Next.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
What would you have had to do if the volume was higher, or if you were, it had gone into that chain? What do you do? What is the?
Once we arrive, if I feel the volume is just massive, then I'm probably going to try and shut down those inlets.
Oh, okay.
But then that's after we shut down the flow. I mean, the first thing we do is go into the lift station and we shut off the pumps. Then that creates a problem though, because all these residences and that schools, they're still delivering sewage to that well, basically. So now this is where we get our vac truck involved. If the vac truck is not enough to haul off the volume of sewage, I'm then calling in a waste hauler as well. But we did not have to do that. Fortunately, we were able to keep up with the inflow. But you can see, I'm sorry, did I answer your question, Mary?
Yeah, it did, thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, the goal here, to further on your question, is to get to this as quickly as possible and stop the sewage from flowing. Yeah. The green area is where the break was, and the yellow are our storm sewer systems as well. This was our lift station, and this is a valve vault. Next. So we immediately, once we shut off the valve vault, the valves in the vault, this lift station well is now filling up. So we are continually vacuuming up the sewage and hauling it to the treatment plant. Next. And this is the crew doing just that. The group of 3 is shutting off the valves, and then the one fella with the vac truck is hauling up the waste. Next. This was the actual break. Now, what worries me and what I'd like to bring to the board's attention is I've built a number of force mains in my career. They have every single one of them have been poly pipe for the reason that it does not corrode. That's its big advantage. Lake Mills has a lot of ductile iron, and a lot of it is old. And so I worry that, Dwayne and I worry that we are sitting on a time bomb a bit. We're going to start experiencing in the next few years, I think, a number of breaks in our force main system. So we're going to be looking at just the next coming years, some remediation projects, trying to replace some of these systems. Yes?
How old was this pipe?
1960s? Yeah, from the
Okay.
60s,
So about 60 years old?
yes.
Okay.
And ductile iron's very durable, but it is corrosive. And it's transporting an element that is corrosive, so. Next.
So in this photo, the surface of that pipe overall looks pretty good. It's not all rusty.
The exterior looks good, yes. The corroded metal is on the inside of the pipe, obviously, and working
So-
its way out.
So ductile iron's been used for sewage for 100 years probably,
Yes, perhaps.
and it's, some people think it's a good material. I thought most of the corrosion was from the outside elements, not from the inside.
Not with sewage. I mean, sewage is a corrosive element. So, it does stand up well with your exterior clays and your acidic clays, but, and I would say this stood up well. I mean, like you said,
Later on tonight, we'll talk about the maintenance plan. In fact, there are a number of streets that Randy and I and Mark were really thinking about doing a mill and overlay, but because of the infrastructure that was below that road, we really are looking to then do a CIP to replace some water main that is 100 years old in that case, and then looking to delay that mill and overlay for one or two more years, and then go after the mill and overlay, even short of doing our full reconstruction. But you'll find tonight, those streets are not in our maintenance plan that we'll talk about a little later. But that kind of gives you an example of what Randy's talking about, of how we plan that in the capital plan.
All right, so thank you for the commercial. We'll hear about that later.
Last question, does the wastewater utility televise forced mains?
no.
Could they?
No, I do not think so. For one, we'd have to relieve the pressure
Yeah.
on the pipe. And it's not like you have manholes that serve as junctions in order to run the camera up them. So,
Okay, thanks.
I think you could possibly do it, but And so.
If you want to try delaying
Locally, this Ferry Drive is similar to the Ferry Drive force main replacement that was done 2 years ago. And if you recall, we did a pipe bursting. There was another break on Ferry Drive at another lift station to the south, which was probably the same era of construction. In that case, we did a pipe bursting. And I think that's where Randy is looking to possibly do with this project as well.
I suppose we could televise that. I mean, you have to run a snake versus the robotic eye.
It's obviously not as conducive as a gravity sewer, yes.
I wouldn't want to do it, but if we're instructed. Next. Uh-oh. All right, so this is a high-max sleeve. We use this for sewer, force mains and water. It's a very good remediation tool. Next. And he's just tightening down the bolts now for it. Next. Because this was a sewer main, a force main break, we had to inform the DNR, and then I composed this letter as well and put it on our website for the public. Just informing everybody of where the break was, that there was some contamination from sewage, and what we estimated, and it was a close estimation of volume that we believe leaked into the environment. And next. Water Department, we've had a few breaks since we last met as well here. Next. First one was on Elm Street on the northern side. Next. So, yeah, this is north. I forget the name of that road. I'm sorry, I can't read it. Pine? Okay. Pine. The water main runs along the southbound road on Elm Street, and we were able to get access to it. Next. But it did involve, we had to tear up some curb and gutter and some pavement. Next. But it went fairly typically. Next. And next. And this was done within a couple hours, and people had their water back on in that area. Next. Now this break was a little trickier. This is on Keys Street, and it dead ends here with this hydrant. Next. And next. What complicated it was we had no trench stability on the sidewalls, so they continued to collapse. Typically, if your trench walls are, if your subgrade subsoils are clays, cohesive clays, then you have more stability in your trench, and it's not as dangerous. But you can see here, this is mainly silty sands, no cohesion, and they were very wet. So we had to take extra precautions here, which we did. We had to bring in a trench box next, and then we continually were vacuuming this out. But our challenge here when we start vacuuming out non-cohesive soils is we are undermining the road. We don't want to do that either. So it was continual man-on or a presence there with the vac truck and paying attention to what we were pulling out and the volume of it. Next. And next. But eventually we did locate the break, and we did put a high-max sleeve on it. Next. Which is that silver item right there. Next. Next. And that was the water departments. So moving into, we have two construction projects. One is underway and another is coming up soon. That is not Lake Mills, by the way. That was a project I was on for the DOT. But next. Brookstone is underway right now. They have just recently completed all the sanitary sewer, including the laterals. And now they're moving into the water main. We are currently 2 weeks ahead of schedule on this project. Next. You can see this is the area that we're working on in Phase 8 now. And that's American Way there. Next. This is the schedule. It's hard to read from here, but I've marked out where we're at right now. We're moving into the water main, and we are working on the water services as well. So I don't want to jinx myself, or jinx the project, but we are ahead of schedule right now. And if things go well, we anticipate ending a little early on this. Next. Coming up tomorrow, we have a pre-con meeting for the TAP grant project. It's a lot of sidewalk work primarily. There is a controlled crosswalk as well. The contractor anticipates starting this project in the beginning of April. I think that was the last slide I had, Dave. You try the next? Yep. So, yeah, we anticipate this to be what was the duration of the end of June for the TAP grant project. And hopefully if the weather stays moderate, we should have no issues pouring concrete in April. But if it does get cold, then we'll implement cold weather concreting procedures. So, any questions? Yes, sir.
What's the projected completion date on Brookstone 8?
August?
Final completion in the contract, it must be done by October, mid-October.
Okay.
But that's remediation and everything.
Yeah, substantial I thought was in August.
With the 2 weeks ahead of schedule, August would be, substantial completion was originally September. But if we're ahead of schedule, it'll be pushed into August. They just have time for, in order to get the most competitive bids, we provided the widest construction window possible under the project. So they have, under the contract, for full completion until October 11th, I believe is the date.
Great, thank you.
Anything?
At low cost, not high capital cost improvements in order to get a bike trail using shared use paths, using sharrows, using marked lanes along the route to provide that route. Again, the decision comes down to parking versus the bicyclists. So Dave, could you jump to the next slide? So tonight's discussion for the second alternate to a route from the Brookstone area to downtown or to Main Street bike trail is a little circuitous, but uses several trails that already exist. So from Brookstone Drive near Wallace Park, there is already a shared use path that runs east and west, except for a small piece next to the chocolate shop. There is a shared use path there already. It is not paved, but it exists and it is in a gravel. It connects to the Drumlin Trail, which goes north-south on CP Avenue. That is also an off-street shared use path. And then from there runs through Jefferson Street, Grove Street, Giles, Oak, and Water Street to connect to the Main Street bike path or bike lanes on Main Street. I can stop there, or we can go into each individual page, but the topic is very similar to our last discussion. There are streets where we have to completely remove parking. There are some streets that we could probably, we can't do both, or we can't do either. We would have to go with removing bicycles, or removing parking and putting sharrows in, meaning the width is just not there for both. So I guess I'm going to open it up to questions unless someone else would like me to go through each slide.
Questions, comments?
I have a few questions. So I was curious, because I know you had mentioned cost was low cost. was one of the emphasis of this particular bike lane marking project. And I'm curious to know, is it in the 2023 budget? Was it included, or is it something that is, so is this something we budgeted for last year for, in the 2024 budget that we, or is this is it a new?
There's no budget, there has been no budget for bicycle improvements, but
Okay.
if we're talking just painting,
Okay,
then likely staff can, we have the paint, we have paint.
Okay, so this
staff-
isn't-
Staff could paint lines if we wanted to do it sooner.
Okay.
So there's no high-cost items within here. It would be the painting of markings, maybe some signs, some signage. So it would be a low-impact project.
okay. Because I recall, this would have been back maybe in, I think it was in 2022, and I was looking at my notes, something called the Transportation Enhancement Program Fund, which was a way of funding bicycle, like transportation, like bicycle related projects. And so I didn't know if there was a threshold by which if we had a plan and this wasn't in the budget and it was over a certain threshold or amount, that particular fund, and I don't know much about it, but I had in my notes that it was a possibility. And so that's why I was asking. So that doesn't sound like that would apply for this particular effort.
If the dollars were large enough, so first off, is it in 23? No. If the project was large enough, we would look at
Something.
if there's a funding mechanism.
Yeah,
Depending on what we would do in this location, there's a couple places where it could be talked about, which, like by this chocolate shop, that could be constructed. In the area around the Jefferson Street intersection, if the Drumlin Spur Trail was expanded on the DNR's easement, that would probably be some cost. Again, I think the grant that you're mentioning, Mary, is probably more for like the TAP grant, where we're doing multiple
okay,
larger pieces throughout the city, or one specific large cost trail.
okay,
Then I would recommend we definitely look at,
okay. So this
funding
doesn't apply. I
options.
just didn't know if there was a dollar threshold, so thank you. That clarifies that this is a, like we talked about paint and keeping it truly to the low cost. I'm saying like real low cost side of things versus it being a transformational big investment, where you go for the grant.
that was definitely what staff
Yeah.
looked at, was
Okay,
how do we try to provide this route without a large dollar cost?
okay.
Any other questions?
Go ahead, Greg.
Thank you for the research and proposal here. As I look at this, one of my concerns is on primary routes, taking away parking. I went out and did a quick count of cars on this route, and came across 8 parked cars on this route, and then did the same drive on East Lake Street, and there was 1 car parked. So a primary route, 1 car parked, but secondary route, of course, people park in their neighborhoods, they park in front of their houses. And there'd be a lot of people affected, especially on Water Street. It's a pretty narrow street. Taking away that parking would be a burden for those residents, I think. Looking at that primary route, the concern, I think, is in that downtown area. How do we navigate the downtown area? Get people from Brookstone downtown is not too burdensome, but when we get downtown, what are we going to do with the bike route? And how do we hook that up to the Main Street route that's currently existing? So, I think we had 2 alternatives. We had 1 alternative. Alternative 1 was to put 1 lane on Lake Street when we were in the downtown area, and the other ones to go Madison. So they kind of split and go in different directions there. Alternate 2, I think, was to put both lanes on Madison Street.
Correct?
And there was some talk about considering an alternate 3, which would be to take the sidewalk. I think it's a 5-foot sidewalk, and maybe extending that to a 10-foot sidewalk in the park And that would become a multi-use path, basically, so that we could route the bike traffic basically in the park.
And that was a discussion, I believe, in the December meeting at this board. During the discussion was that is a potential, another option, yes.
Could we look at that option?
As far as a cost, we can.
Yeah,
If you would
yeah.
like us to.
Understand what that cost is and
So Greg, you're looking at what happens once you get to the end of this plan, because this didn't go onto the street that you're talking about. You're talking about once this gets to the end.
Madison meets East Lake
Yeah.
Street and enters the downtown area. That's kind of the rub right now on the bike lane. If we bring it through East Lake Street, when we get to the downtown area, how do we get that bike traffic to connect to Main Street?
Okay.
So there's two plans that were presented already. I'm just asking, can we look at a third option,
Okay.
being a multi-purpose that would go through the park?
Okay.
Multi-purpose trail. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Couple concerns that come up
Great.
would be impact to trees, impact, and then the connection at some intersection of connecting to the Main Street Trail, whether that's in the corners of either Madison and Main Street or either corner. as
You'd have
it's-
it on both sides, really, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So those are just some initial thoughts without exploring completely that cost and that route would be, the tree situation, of course, would be of concern as well.
Another potential concern might be events in the park and the combination of bicycles and people, a lot of people during those events. I look at that as the events are not that frequent compared to the amount of hours that the park is there without events. So there's a lot of times when the bicycle traffic would benefit when there's people not there. So it's a disadvantage, but I in my mind, I don't think it's a showstopper.
We would retain the ability to close a multi-purpose path during a special event as well and leave it as pedestrian only. So we would have an opportunity during review of a special event if we thought that interaction would be too much to close it. So we can try and cost out what an expansion of a 10-foot path there would look like and look more into how we would merge that traffic onto the Main Street bike trail there and bring something back.
So another concern is bringing traffic to this 10-foot path from the east side on East Lake Street. There is also some concern about loss of parking for a business on East Lake Street. And I don't know what a good solution for that would be. But that will come up.
That'd be in the hot dog stand?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so I live on the east side. I bicycle quite a bit. I used to bicycle all the time to my workplace, which was Hamlin. East Lake Street for an adult bicyclist is not too bad, in my opinion, for me, because it's relatively wide and there's not that many cars parked on that street. But I can see, I can 100% understand and that marked bicycle lanes are safer and better for more people.
Yeah, I guess I would just say that at its core, the decision will be at some point, at somewhere along a route, there will be a decision made between bicycle friendliness and parking. And that'll be unavoidable no matter what route we pick. So it'll be something you'll all have to continue to grapple with as we decide whether to or what type of plan to implement. It's just an unfortunate reality, I think, and without significant reconstructions to an area.
So is the board in agreement then that it makes sense to look at the, a 10-footish wide path through the park? Is that,
As an option to review, yes.
I agree.
yeah, okay.
Any other questions?
No, I would like to just add that I also am and concerned about removing a lot of parking. And I was trying to, as a homeowner, grapple with the inconvenience, if you will, and when you might be inconvenienced. Are people intending to ride their bikes? Is this a school? I don't know if the objective was to help school children get to the downtown, if this was just general public, Brookstone getting downtown. I was thinking, are there creative ways where you have restrictions on parking, like we can't park in the winter, but can you not park during school hours? I don't know, I was just trying to think of, are there ways to allow some flexibility for homeowners so they can park there at night, but they can't park there during the day during school transport? I don't know that those types of options are easy or that they're feasible or smart, but I was trying to think about the inconvenience of how far people would have to walk to go visit these homeowners. Some of them have very short driveways, so it's not like they can pile a lot of cars in if they have people coming to visit. And I was just trying to see how many houses down does somebody have to walk to go park around the corner if we remove the parking in front of their home, when these homeowners, and this is in a mature neighborhood, the homes have been there for quite a long time. So I'm an advocate for trying not to reduce or removing parking. So I like the one side. I know a few options where without parking or one side, I would be advocating for as much as possible to at least have one side of parking on any route that we can, if we can make that happen. Because I feel that and especially then when you're getting to the downtown area, the visitor parking and making sure that it's a lot of parking when you start to get down towards the businesses that are parking, especially during events. And so that's just a little concern I have too, is ensuring that we can fit people who are spending their money in the downtown area.
The one-sided parking, they did accomplish that on South Main Street, but they had to widen the street to do that. So actually Lake Street is too narrow for that.
Lake Street is, I was just looking at some of the, in this particular path, had some options where it could go single side.
On the secondary path.
On the second,
On the secondary, so
yeah.
maybe we should clarify, the use of Sharrows is typically a residential area type use where the ADT or the average daily traffic is under 1,500. And that's why that Sharrows were not presented on the Lake Street option, because we felt that the traffic volume was higher than that. So we didn't present that Sharrow option. The DOT recommendations is at least the information and the guidance that we've reviewed is 1,500 ADT. To give you an idea what that is, that's one car every minute, all day long. So
And East Lake Street meets that criteria?
East Lake Street, in some areas, at least some of the information we have is higher than that.
Yeah, it's a lot of traffic. I have a couple of comments or questions about the indirect path. In the, let's see, I guess that would be Jefferson Street, well, I'll just say the corner, the L corner on the west end of Jefferson Street. Is there right of way to make that wider?
DNR on one side, then he's thinking of the haircut place that's on the other side. It's just not.
So the cost that comes into play on that one,
Of course, yes.
that stopped me from looking at that further,
Okay.
is the bridge. And the bridge is dictating the width of that
Okay.
street in that area.
Significant hurdles.
So that would be
Yeah.
then a cost
Yeah. Okay.
change. So we can definitely look at that if that's something
Well-
of widening, but then you're into capital cost.
Yeah. That's enough.
Okay. Good, great.
On that, I had a little bit of a follow-up. With the construction that's going on there with the condominiums on Jefferson Street corner there,
Mhm.
I am selecting the right area, right? That's where the
That's where
construction's being
Jefferson
done?
meets CP Avenue, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
Jefferson and CP.
So there is that trail that goes back behind there that seems to have some work done to it, but it hasn't been maintained. What would be the future of that? Would that be something that we'd look at? Is it DNR property? Is that something we'd look at working with them to maybe develop and extend that trail a little bit? Or what's the thoughts on that?
So Dave, could you go to slide 9, please? I apologize, Dave. So I'll start as Dave is pulling that up. So on slide 9, we talked about an alternative red route. That trail, to our knowledge, is
One back, Dave. There you go.
the red area is, I believe, the area you're talking about.
Yes, exactly.
And that is part of the old railroad spur. It also is an extension of, to the south is the railroad spur, existing drumlin spur, thank you, Dan, for the shared use path that is to the south. For some reason, when that was built, it was not extended to Jefferson Street, but our feeling is there is a DNR easement, and that could be explored with the DNR to expand that trail through that right of way. As far as the old, if you go down there and walk through it, it still has that railroad feel. I mean, the rails are gone, but you can see the ditches are on both sides, and you've got probably a pretty good base.
Does it have like a raised base there?
Yes.
Yes, so as far as cost or capital cost to do that, if you're just talking gravel, you're probably just talking a gravel base for that stretch to build some support to it, but most of the construction is there.
Does that continue north across
The
that street?
easements, to my knowledge, my memory, Dan, if you have that, I believe they've been vacated to the
That's
north.
my recollection, exactly.
Okay.
There's no path to East Lake Street from there.
Correct.
Yeah, I believe the properties to the north, that area, the trail was vacated.
Okay.
Does that answer your?
It does answer
Okay.
my question. Thank you.
So how much work would it be for the city staff to talk to the DNR about that?
It wouldn't be, we can reach out to them. I don't know that we'll have something for you by the next meeting on that specifically, but we certainly can. I think they'll be amenable to it as if we're paying for it.
There would be very low impact too. We would not be altering much, so I think that would be an easy discussion.
But what does it get us, I guess? It maybe gets his entrance into another neighborhood possibly? Some residents would have better access to the trail or something along those lines?
I think you see the yellow area, basically if you're a bicyclist, you're leaving the Drumlin Trail or the Glacial Drumlin Trail spur,
Tree safety?
and you're
Okay.
going on, so you'd have safety around this corner if you're heading into the Grove neighborhood, both north and south, kind of Grove into Giles and the route we talked about. I'm sorry? So Dan reminded me that we should note that the Drumlin Trail does connect to the Glacial Drumlin Trail. The spur does to the south. Obviously, taking bicyclists off of CP Avenue and off of portions of Jefferson that have a lot of truck traffic probably is a benefit. Again, it without further trail, it just is bringing people to Jefferson Street.
Cutting a corner.
but it is cutting a corner and it is eliminating some on-street bicycles.
It's more picturesque, in my opinion.
Gives me a shortcut when I go on my runs, but yeah. All right, thank you.
The other question I had about this second indirect route was the missing section on American Way. Is there a path forward on that?
If we're willing to pay for it, I think there's a path forward on it.
Is there a known cost? Is there a known cost?
No, not unless the position of the private property owner has changed.
Okay. All right, that's all I have. Anybody else?
So your question was along Enterprise Drive,
Yeah,
There's
where are
there's
you?
one gap. There's a gap along American Way.
American Way, okay.
Go back.
Which page? 3? No,
Dave, can you go to slide 3, please?
not the one?
One more.
That's 3 for me, but.
And I'll try to describe it.
Yeah, I didn't.
Right above the word path, if you go straight north from that area and hit the yellow line, it's from Enterprise Drive to ditch 35. There is a small portion that is not constructed.
Gotcha.
So ditch 35 is the dark line that you're seeing going north and south, and then Enterprise Drive is the first intersection right of CP Avenue.
We lack sufficient right-of-way to make the connection within property under the city's control.
Is it correct that the city asked for and received right-of-way from all the other property owners on this path except for this one property owner?
Generally, that's correct. There were easements that were established previously for a multi-use trail on the Ditch Witch or Toro property, which is at the corner of American Way and CP. That was originally platted on the north side of the property, so we did shift that to the south side of that property, the north side of American Way, and we secured easements. There's obviously a lot of city-owned land there, the park. We secured easements all along American Way traveling east to west towards CP Avenue, and that is the one property owner that would not just give us an easement. So that's the area that did not get constructed.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Any further questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all the work, Dwayne.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, item 7, discussion recommendation on yard waste site.
Dave, if you can pull up the opinion of costs, please. So I wanted to start out with sharing with the board that 2 weeks ago on a Monday when the crew was coming back to work, we found that obviously some commercial contractors were end dumping supplies into our existing yard waste site, such as concrete, pallets, and tires. So to me, this increases the need for us to create a new site here. I just want to start out with that. I did reach out to 2 local vendors to get some preliminary costs. And then I put it in this spreadsheet, which was included in the agenda. The lion's share of the cost is going to be for a controlled gate access. But this also includes 3 cameras that are compliant. Yeah, I'd have to have the technician here to explain why they're compliant. I'm sorry, it's out of my ability to explain and understand. But I did want to emphasize that these are preliminary estimates. I believe when things go out to bid, the price would come down some. And most of the actual construction materials and the labor is going to be done in-house. So again, a good deal of the cost is going to be coming from the cameras and the gate. Next slide, please. I believe it was the layout. Yes. So this is the system I'm envisioning. We're going to have a controlled access gate here, and then we're just going to be putting in concrete blocks, which we already have, to pretty much prevent any cars from getting around there. And then we're just going to build 2 or 3 corrals here. This will be a gravel surface as of right now. And then the last slide, Dave, the last PDF there. The cameras would be mounted on these poles, but they're going to be fed into this well house, and that's where we would keep our DVR. But we would basically run, I don't know right now if it would be overhead or underground. If we could do underground, that'd be preferred, but run it up this pole and then overhead to this pole, and then we mount our one camera here. You notice the final cost projection is around $38,000. So I would encourage the board to give this some serious consideration. I would like to get moving on this right away, and have this ready by early summer or late spring. Yes.
Can you speak to any kind of labor expectations on the camera management? So is it just when you have an incident, then somebody needs to go out and actually look at the cameras, or how the whole camera process is going to be handled, and whether that's something that you're equipped to be able to do with your team?
Do you want to say something?
It should be cellular, so it won't be like now where we have to climb up there and physically pull it. We'll be able to view it remotely. So there should be virtually, other than the time it takes, Randy or somebody to view it and find when an incident occurred or review what was going on. Compared to what we do now, it should be virtually take almost no time versus what we do now, because we can just log into the program.
That's an upgrade.
Yes, absolutely.
Take upgrades.
I'm surprised you didn't get cell phone-based trail cams for the existing site.
It's my understanding, it's not conducive right now for mounting a camera like this. Where would we put the?
There's poles at the existing site as well. That's where the cameras currently are located, at least some of them.
Where would we put the data collection spot?
A cell phone-based trail camera system talks to the cloud over a cell phone connection, so there is no local DVR.
Okay. I would love to build whatever you tell me to.
Yeah, I thought there was already such a system. I didn't know you had to climb poles to pull the data.
That's all you're saying.
That's. I'm just surprised about that. Yeah.
Does this fall within the budget? Was this already budgeted for this amount?
With the capital included in the 2024 budget and some carryover we have from a previous budget, as long as we stay under $40,000, we should have adequate funds to cover the project.
Great. And then my main concern on the project is actually the access to the local citizens, making sure that the locals have access somehow through a keypad system or whatever, and that they're able to access that during reasonable times, that there's not strict restrictions like it closes down at 5 o'clock or something like that. What type of hours are you looking at being available to people who live in the city of Lake Mills?
So this automatic gate that I have quoted here is for key fob access. We could set this up to be 24-hour access if you preferred. So they're just.
Okay.
What's
We
the
can also
difference?
set up, I believe we could set it to a timer as
Absolutely.
well, so it could open automatically at 5 a.m. and close at 10 p.m. if we didn't have the key fobs available right away for when we're done, so we could have expansive hours, that close at certain times. But the overnight, it could be secured.
Yeah, I didn't include that picture.
You're not putting
there's no
lights,
shenanigans
lights
going
there
on?
though, are you? You're not putting lights out there, are you? No lights.
There is one light currently mounted in that, at the end of CP Avenue.
Okay.
There's a wellhead there. So we do have some security measures and lighting at that corner, American Way and CP Avenue.
Okay.
But this is a bit further south than that.
Yeah, this is the extension of CP Avenue, like one city block south of that intersection.
No new lights are proposed to be installed.
Okay. So you can set, many of these new electronics, you can set on the, like the sunset sunrise kind of situation, so and that makes it more challenging for citizens to know whether we have that same problem in other areas of Lake Mills, to know when it's actually sunset and sunrise, but that's another option, so that during daylight hours it's accessible. I'm not sure. I think 24/7 is very generous. We have that now. I don't know that having it open at night, if lighting isn't appropriate for safety and other reasons, is a wise decision. So I would say there are hours that are daylight centered, I think is in our best interest.
Yeah, I just wanted to explain that that option was available. We could,
Yeah.
by saying 24/7 access, we can set the parameters however we want. We can either go with a keypad system or the fob.
I just want to make sure that we don't get so restrictive that it's like during business hours when most of our residents are at work.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice that they could come home from work and actually work on their yards and get rid of the waste.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
How are you planning on controlling access initially?
Well, I believe once the gate install is going to include, and I say this right now, with a key fob access.
And my question is, I understand there's going to be a gate and it's going to be able to be controlled, but what's the policy for controlling? When is it going to be open? When is it going to be closed? How are residents going to be able to go in and out?
And get their fobs.
Whatever we would decide to set the policy as.
And that's my question.
Okay, if you have a recommendation, I will completely entertain that. Right now, I would just envision a key fob, and then the gate will not open, say, after 7 PM or such. I'm just speculating here now.
So Drake, do you have any
No,
ideas?
I think policy is the purview of the board and the city council, so it depends what level of service that you all want to provide. We'll install a system that is capable of providing any amount of availability, but the level of service is up to you, ultimately, the city council.
Okay, here's what I want. I want a gate that's controlled by license plate reader. If the license plate belongs to a resident of the city, then the gate opens. Can you do that?
That's going to be tougher to implement. License plates change often. You'd have to go through like a registration process where we're, intersecting information from like a DOT database or something. The police department has that ability, and we have license plate readers that can be used for this use. You'll see it in like parking garages in Chicago, for instance. You then have a registered user that pays a fee. Their license plate is appropriately read. They are able to go through. We don't have the technology to do that at this point, and this proposal doesn't really contemplate that, but it's certainly something that could be looked into. We do have 2 automated license plate readers within the police department right now. They were both donated. They're quite expensive. Those are both mounted on police vehicles. I'm not aware of one that is mounted within the city of Lake Mills, like on our infrastructure, on a light pole, on a stoplight, or anything like that. It is certainly a use that is available and that we could research and figure out what the cost is. My guess is that it's significantly more than the estimate that's in front of you right now.
The reason I suggested that solution was because that wouldn't require city staff to potentially to provide, to issue.
You're right there with regard to the way that this all has to come together. When this conversation started and has expanded over the years, you look at, manning this site 24 hours a day or during business hours. You look at registering in person and receiving a key fob for, a purchase price of that key fob, and then you're a registered user through that, you essentially have a license. We've looked at user fees where you just, purchase some form of access, or just having it open as it kind of is right now on a more restricted basis because of the installation of the gate. All of this needs to be examined and, come up with the right policy and move forward. With regard to the automated license plate readers, that is going to be significantly more capital cost at the front end, without doubt. But that, it can be researched, and we can get information to you with regard to the application and the cost. So it's a starting point.
So I'm going to suggest that we figure out whether we want a key fob reader or a keypad system before we purchase the gate system.
I would invite the board to have that discussion.
Well, I would suggest then at this point to go with a keypad system, because you don't have the extra cost of key fobs for 500 or whatever number of residents. If you issue a keypad number, it's a number.
Yeah, we would likely pass the cost of the fob on to the resident.
Well, that's very nice of you. It's still a cost.
Would you consider the township in that also, that the town residents to purchase a fob? Because I know.
That's up to all of you in the city council.
The current ordinance does not contemplate non-residents being able to dump at the waste site. So that would take a change. You could sell that service or that ability to anyone. We've talked about costs for contractors and allowing them to use the site as well, rather than just solely residents. So these are options that are available.
And my recommendation would be to find a way to accommodate a regional approach if it's within the city's capability to do so. But if the city council wanted it to be a city service only, a city resident service only, then that is how the current ordinance is drafted.
Yeah, I think we'd follow the current ordinance, and if the township wants to approach the city and negotiate a deal, that would be something that would have to happen in the future, but right now, I believe we're looking at the ordinance and just the city of Lake Mills.
Okay. I didn't know about the ordinance, so thank you.
So I guess I would be in favor of the keypad as well, thinking that could even be done through an email if the city chose to. I'm not sure how it would be administered, but that would be an option that could be available.
The one difficulty there, and I think the preference to the key fob is being able to track the specific user. I mean, each and every time a gate is open, you know what fob that it sends a signal, exactly who is supposed to be operating and who opened that. With regard to a keypad just providing a 4-digit code that everybody has, that information gets out there pretty quickly, and you lose the ability, you lose control over the information itself, who is using it when.
I would recommend you have a keypad system with a 6 or 8-digit code and issue a unique number for each individual, so that you have pretty much the same ability to track individuals. Naturally, it's easier to share a keypad number than a key fob, but they both can be shared.
So we have a proposal in front of us, I guess. So we can act on this, or we can give further recommendation, ask for further information from city staff to come back to us. I guess what we'd be doing if we move forward, we'd be recommending to council that they look at this to approve for the future if we would pass it, so.
Yeah, I'm speaking for myself. I'm all for it. It's just working out the details.
I agree. And I can support either a fob or a keypad. I think the administration of both have unique, labor. Someone's going to have to do something and keep track and reissue I mean, there's administrative setup and maintenance and monitoring and all of that going on, and I don't know the logistics or specifics on what is in the best interest for city team to handle. So I would support either one of those options, and I support the proposal as you have written. Just, again, it's getting down to the details of which approach is best suited, because there are pros and cons for both of the two options.
Yeah, I think just the statement that you want a resident to have an individualized access is enough.
Yep.
To know that the recommendation isn't just to set it on a timer, but to have an individualized access code or of some kind to get in is enough direction for us to move forward with implementation if the city council agrees.
This is Tom Pico. I'm coming in late to the game here, but I would support a key fob for a number of reasons discussed over a keypad. And I hope that the townships are going to be at least discussed in this and included, because I know they did show interest, and I know in our city meeting that our board had interest as well.
So Tom, did you have a reason for preferring a key fob over a keypad?
I think everybody has kind of gone to those. I mean, you go to any workout place, you use a key fob, you can track all the information, how many times you're using it. I think that's very important when you have a site like that, so you don't have abuse of the site, so to speak, because there's people that have businesses and they'll bring their stuff from their businesses and continually use it. It allows you to track that and track the use of that. I would also recommend cameras, obviously, so you can grab license plates. That way you don't have to go through the expense of license plate readers, and the police can just do that, run the plate numbers. It's a lot simpler. But yeah, I mean, key fob, I think, is the answer. Keypads are, I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages to both, but I think the key fob is just, issuing that, and I think the expense to the resident, whether it's town, city, whoever around the community, I think when you look at yard waste sites, they're expensive. It's a service. If you go to other municipalities, they're charging for those services, and they're charging townships for grinding up brush and doing all that stuff. It's just an extra added expense. They can no longer afford to do it all on their own.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Knowing who's coming to the site, it might be conducive. It might be not a good idea to have a camera located at the vehicle at the gate so that you can get some indication of whoever's using the individualized access. You can see what vehicle or what person is using that vehicle as an enforcement or even just as a deterrent mechanism. So again, that's a detail that can be worked out, but the current camera system locations here maybe are not conducive to that. And one last thing I wanted to mention was we talked about the ordinance. There's two reasons for changing the ordinance. One is access for town or contractors or whatever. The other one is to remove the allowing disposal of things like concrete, asphalt at the yard waste site. That's currently allowed in the ordinance. It's currently allowed at the current site. John's disposal and recycling does take small residential sized quantities of those materials. It's not advertised by the city or by John's Disposal or Recycling that they do that. So there's I don't see a reason to still allow it at the current site, much less the new site.
Yeah, we can
Agreed.
bring the ordinance forward to the Public Works Board at a future meeting to see if, and start out with a proposed draft that the board could discuss and perhaps issue a recommendation to the city council on amendments to that ordinance.
Would the board be interested in that?
Sure, I think we can do that separate from this proposal.
I agree.
but Yeah.
So that's a to-do item then?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Very good, thank you. Anything else on this item?
Do we need a motion to move forward?
We do.
Yeah. A motion to recommend as proposed is adequate, or add whatever you'd like to it.
Do you want me to
You
take
want
a
to,
shot at it?
give it
All
a
right.
roll?
So motion to move forward to city council the new yard waste proposal with city staff making recommendations on the access point, whether it be a keypad or a fob system. And for local city of Lake Mills residents to have access during the daylight hours. Needs to be seconded.
Second. I wasn't sure if you were done. You kind of left me hanging.
Does that work, Dan?
And
I'm sorry, Mr. Drescher. All right.
could somebody just read that back, the way it was written down? So we know.
Madison, did you catch all of it?
Yeah, I have a motion to move forward to city council the new yard waste proposal with city staff making recommendations on access points like key fobs and city residents having access in daylight.
Just add key fob versus keypad,
Okay.
and then you'll have it all.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? If not, roll call vote, and thanks for writing it all down, Madison.
Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Ms. Schmager,
Aye.
Mr. Beagle,
No.
Sorry.
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Picard.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, next is discussion recommendation on 2024 street and sidewalk maintenance program.
Dwayne will kick us off on our annual street maintenance and sidewalk maintenance project plan.
Thanks, Drake. Thanks, Dave, for pulling up the presentation. I'm going to try and truncate this presentation as well. I brought it forward from last year. Probably 90% of it is exactly the same. We just didn't improve. There hasn't been a lot of added streets. So many of if you could go one slide, Dave, this slide is exactly the same. We're still maintaining 33.5 miles plus the 2 miles of maintenance on Main Street. Next slide, please. This is just an example of what we rate. Next slide, Dave. This is showing how in 2016, what we were looking at as far as some of the ratings overall in the city. And as of 2023, our average rating is a 6.8, which is an improvement. Next slide, please. Again, from memory, this is 2016 versus 2022 and how the ratings have improved over that time frame. Next slide. This, although it's a little grainy, talks about costs related to each costs and activities that would occur with each type of rating. Next slide, please. Again, this goes into our 60-year life cycle analysis and what our goal is with this program, which is doing chip seals or doing street maintenance on streets every 7 years, whether that's a chip seal, a mill and overlay, or a total reconstruction. Next slide, please. This talks about what that maintenance plan is, 7-year maintenance program, as I said. Typically, we're doing activities of chip seal in 5 through 8 ratings, and down to 1 through 3 ratings, getting a reconstruction or being in the CIP list. After a new construction, we're looking at 2 to 3 chip seal cycles every 7 years, and then following with a mill and overlay cycle to extend that life for upwards of 60 years. So again, we're looking at that first mill and overlay occurring probably in year 21 or 28. Next slide, please. This is probably one of the slides I changed the most. If we maintain a 7-year program, that means we have to touch 14% of the streets every year. That equates to about 4.8 miles. In the 2024 proposed maintenance plan that we'll talk about, we are looking at doing almost all chip seal at 6.6 miles, so we're actually touching more streets. Again, we'll talk about it later, but price of chip seal is in the $2 range versus mill and overlay and reconstruction are much higher. So this year, as we'll slide into the next slide, Dave, this year we're actually doing more than that 7-year range, but that's fine because some years we're going to have a lot more mill and overlay. Here's a slide just showing some of the budget history. Again, in 2024, we're at $300,000 for street maintenance. There is also $15,000 in the one capital budget for sidewalk repairs, and then the remainder of the sidewalk that we'll talk about later comes from a second budget, which is the special assessment account. As you can see, in 2017 and 2018, 7 years ago, we had a large expenditure in the maintenance budget to try and catch up and to make the improvement that this program has created. What that does to us this year, and thanks to Randy and Mark for joining me on several tours, we have a larger list of candidates than we have dollars to spend. So Dave, could we go to the candidates map if that's possible? Oh, I'm sorry, Mary.
Well, I just had a question on the Paiser rating. So your bar chart ends at 2016. The bar chart that you had back on page 4, it was 2010 through 2016. It was showing the overall Paiser rating. And then in 2023, our overall Paiser rating is 6.8. What happened, like, because I was looking at the money and you had 2 years where you had multi-million. How is the trend gone from 16 to 23? Has it been a straight increase in Paiser rating, or has it been kind of the same, like jumpy bar chart?
We haven't done the analysis.
Oh, okay.
So in 23, what I tried to show was, well, where are we at? And what has 7 or 8 years of this program done?
Okay.
Did we go back and do every year? We did not.
Okay.
So it would be interesting, but probably time consuming. And I could provide that if so desired.
No, I was just curious because the dollar amounts shifted in those 2 years, so I didn't know if that really had a big.
From the agenda. So we did provide a 24 maintenance candidate map. And if you look at that map, there are quite a few green areas on that map. And that's where we get into, these are all the candidates that fit that 7-year period, 5 to 8 chip seal. So what our goal was, and I want to thank Randy and Mark for joining me on several trips as we tried to pare away some of these streets and make some decisions. For example, some of the decisions we made is East Lake Park Place it was reconstructed 7 or 8 years ago. That we felt we could manage for another year and extend it into 2025. Same thing with South Ferry. So some of these streets started to pull away from the list. The other thing we tried to focus on is trying to keep neighborhoods intact and trying to do more in one neighborhood and so that in the future, we're just doing neighborhoods like we did the last 2 years in Brookstone. So then we'll jump to the next slide, which is the proposed maintenance. And you'll see in this slide, we've now taken away East Lake Park Place, we've taken away South Ferry, we've taken away some of the streets that were in the northwest part of the city with anticipation of trying to clump some of those in future years. Again, it is still scattered throughout the city. The industrial park, some areas along Brewster, and then some of the areas in the central part of the city, Water Street and Washington. We can go to the spreadsheet document on the proposed maintenance next. And that gives us a list, again, on the top of that page, we talk about the cost, right? The unit cost for chip seal is average about $2 when we're all said and done for the year. Mill and overlay is about $20 a square yard, and pulverizing is $40 a square yard, and obviously reconstruction is in the hundreds of dollars. So the more we can do early on or before these deteriorate, the better. Obviously, the dollar costs are high. They are much lower on the maintenance. This year's list is very chip seal heavy. It does provide for roughly $284,000 of the $300,000 budget on our initial estimate. I will note that I added a couple columns this year that actually the chip seal costs us about $1.44 a square yard. So there's that extra 60 cents per square yard, covers costs like base reconstruction, some patching, curb and gutter that may be failing, and those vary each year on each street. And we're still continually evaluating those. If there are extra dollars available, we will look at other patching on some of the other streets that maybe aren't on this map. We'll look at maybe some scratch coating occasionally. But in general, the goal is to do the chip seal on these streets and then evaluate the budget, say in August. There is one item that is on the line, and that is the binder course at the cul-de-sac on Tower Street that is proposed. And that is tentatively at $13,000 in the estimate. And so we're trying to hold some of those dollars for that. Again, the budget is $300,000. We're looking at $297 on our estimate, with the understanding that there is a little buffer depending on how much curb and gutter is needed to be done. In our tours, honestly, these streets are in pretty good shape from a curb and gutter standpoint, and so we're hoping those dollars can be used in other places for some patching. Any questions on the street portion of the maintenance budget or the maintenance program?
On your cost per spreadsheet here, where's the 2 mill and overlay streets?
So there are no mill and overlay streets.
Oh.
Does the map show some?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tower.
It shows Tower. Does it show another one?
Yeah, it does show Tower.
Okay, so that would be the tower that I just spoke of. At one time, or in several previous years, we've had a mill and overlay for that project. What Randy and Mark and I have been talking about doing is if the curb and gutter is installed by the developer, we may just put the binder.
Yeah, I think that's the initial map they're looking at. Yeah, you've got a new map. This is the revised one. Tower's the only one that has a proposed mill, and that is still brown. There's an outdated map attached to your packet. So the one furthest south, Dwayne, this one.
Oh.
And the one kind of in the middle of the city aren't included any longer. So those two brown highlighted roads are not included in the street maintenance plan for 2024.
If I may, are you looking at the candidate map?
Yes.
No?
I'm looking at the proposed map, has one little dark,
Right.
that's Tower Street.
Yeah,
The candidate map does have multiple mill and overlays.
three.
Three, yes. Okay, so if we're saying the candidate map, yes, we did have some potential mill and overlays. During our tours, we decided to drop those mill and overlays, and so then you would head to the proposed map, then just has the Tower Street.
And the cost for that?
For the Tower Street, so as
That's the
we've
binder?
talked about, we're talking now about, even though it's highlighted the whole length in our estimate in the spreadsheet, we're just talking about probably doing the binder on the new cul-de-sac at the end of the street.
That's why it's such a small number.
It's a small number. We probably should have,
That's down there.
I apologize, we probably should have shortened the amount of highlighting on Tower Street. We left it the way it was. I'm sorry for the confusion there.
Okay.
What we,
It's me too, just not seeing it there.
in the future, we do anticipate that we will have some maintenance, likely a mill and overlay on that street. But if there's going to be a number of homes being built and construction in the area and some loadings, Randy and I have spoken about, maybe let's just put the binder down, let the homes be built, and then come back and do our maintenance.
And what's the thought then on the other two that were or candidates for mill and overlay? What's the future plan for those two?
Okay, so the one that is on Owen Street, we've had some discussion, there's storm sewer that needs to be replaced. There's a storm sewer that actually runs through a private property in that area. So some storm sewer capital infrastructure would need to be designed and constructed. And so we've held off on that block.
Right.
Mr. Waters, did you have a question?
I was just waving at the audience.
I'm sorry. The second piece in the southwest portion of the city, that one's been on our radar for a number of years. And the reason we keep pushing it off is what happens with Sandy Beach and the area there is there's always a potential that that street could be extended straight through to Sandy Beach to provide another access. And rather than spending dollars on a mill and overlay, we've been holding off on that block. We had that same conversation, Randy, this year. Probably needs a mill and overlay, but we've held for now.
I do have a question now that you went there. So Woodland Drive is a city street then?
It is to the small bulb cul-de-sac that is.
Because I thought there's signs there that say private property, do not enter, that type of thing.
A resident has posted those.
A resident has posted those, to my knowledge. To my knowledge, the right-of-way, although it is narrow, does extend to the cul-de-sac that's at the bottom of the hill.
You might be talking about different streets here.
No,
No,
I think we're in the
there's,
same.
there is a private drive there. Let me pull up a map. Let me see this.
I think he,
I walk my dog in that neighborhood, but
Yeah, this is the cul-de-sac. At this point, I think this is private, isn't it?
A private resident has posted.
Okay, so you're right. I was talking about the Circle Drive cul-de-sac. I was confused. The Woodland Beach, or Woodland Drive cul-de-sac is the stopping point there. Dwayne is correct.
so on the map, it kind of shows a little purple mark. Is that kind of, does that mark designate something?
I apologize, I don't know why that purple mark is showing up.
Right here.
Okay.
It's private. It's posted, it's private.
Because that's probably about the same area where that sign is posted.
I think I've seen the sign in that general area
Yeah.
in the corner.
If it's a ruin
All
on
right.
Google Maps either.
I am
You answered
pulling
my
up.
question.
Okay.
Any other questions? I'll go ahead and move to approve motion 24-3-1, recommendations for 2024 street and sidewalk maintenance program.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to approve motion 24-3-1. Further discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Ms. Schmager?
Aye.
Mr. Picard?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Next item is 9, discussion recommendation of future meeting dates and times.
Do we need sidewalk?
Oops, wait.
The sidewalks?
It was included in the motion. He can run you through the project plan.
I was.
Oh, yeah,
I was
yeah,
good
I'm
with the
sorry.
Sidewalks, I was just.
Yeah.
It was pretty straightforward. Any
Yeah, I
questions?
agree. No, I didn't, but I just want to make sure
Okay.
make sure we didn't overlook any business.
I didn't need more airtime, but generally, it's the continuation of maintenance. It's generally the continuation of Mark and the staff moving in a counterclockwise direction around the city. Mark did focus on East Lake Street this year in that list, as you can see. To what Mark has presented to me is that all complaints are either being addressed currently with either grinding or other techniques, so they're not necessarily on the list. And the list does provide, I believe there's a buffer still of about $7,000 in our estimate. If complaints come in, trip hazards or other complaints come in throughout the city to the Public Works Department, we will add them to the list as the year goes on, just like we do in any other year. So pretty straightforward. It's generally on one street this year, but of course could be throughout the city by the time the year is over.
Okay. Anything else? All right, back on then to number 9, discussion recommendation on future meeting dates and times. So a big reason for this is because just like tonight, last month and this month, we're both down Public Works Board members. Greg Polachek notified the city that he really can't make Thursday meetings, and so he will not be coming to Thursday meetings if they remain on Thursdays. And we've had another member here hasn't been making them either.
Hey, Tom, are you still online? I know that we were holding these meetings on Thursday largely due to Tom's request. But of course, it's important that we have a full board here as much as possible. I don't know, Mr. White has missed the last two, maybe for the same reasons. I know it was originally scheduled on Tuesday. We always have our city meetings on Tuesday, the city council, the planning commission, and the public works boards are traditionally on Tuesdays. For me, it works better on Tuesdays. I think for staff, they may agree as well, but the Tuesday seems to work better for me. I know that Thursday's always tough to fit into my schedule.
Yeah, I did have one conversation with Mr. Beekle, and he can speak up if I'm correct. He thought maybe one solution if we did go back to Tuesdays would be to put the action items near the front of the agenda and have like the director's report and things of that nature at the end, so that if he did need to leave, he'd be able to do so and then could go back and watch the director's reports, but to kind of rearrange the agenda so that if it was on a Tuesday, we could get through the items that may pertain to the town's interest, and then he'd be able to attend the town board meeting on that Tuesday.
So that's a conflict. He has a town meeting at 7 o'clock on Tuesday.
The second Tuesday is the town board meeting at 7.
Yeah.
It's there's no difficulties in rearranging the agenda to do that, is there?
No, we don't have any objection to it.
Tuesday would work well for me. It actually works better for me than Thursdays. So I would be open on Tuesdays at any, I know we were at 5 and that was a problem, so I could, I mean, 5:30 or 6. I don't know what will help Tom or our other members who aren't here, but I'm flexible on Tuesday.
And Greg, 6 is better than 5:30 for you?
Oh, much better. Yes.
Okay.
Time to get home and eat.
So I guess, yeah, the rub
6
there
o'clock.
is we go earlier, it would allow Mr. Buckel more time before his meeting, is
Right.
what you're saying.
But I think it's, Mr. White has a similar issue with early, possibly, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that there may be an issue there with earlier as well.
Getting close to business hours?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
6 o'clock would be fine.
Should we try to go at 6 o'clock on Tuesday for maybe a couple months, see how it goes, and have another discussion?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go.
And if there's things that involve the township, try to put that first on the agenda?
Yes. And do we need to do any kind of a motion for this, or is just a general agreement fine?
It's just scheduling. I apologize, Mr. Beagle, if you were trying to speak. We didn't pick it up.
All right, then the consensus is Tuesday, 6 PM for going forward. And,
Second Tuesday.
Second Tuesday
Yeah.
of the month.
And we'll rearrange the agenda and
Yes.
have director's report at the end and prioritize items with town interest in them to the front of the agenda.
right. And in general, maybe prioritize when we have engineering or other people on the clock towards the front as well. Okay. All right. If nothing else on that item, we move to item 10, recommendations for future agendas.
Go ahead.
I just, a continued conversation on the wastewater treatment plant. I think that,
Based on
that's-
direction from the city council, any further discussions on the wastewater treatment plant will occur at the city council
Oh, okay.
level until they direct me otherwise.
oh, thank you.
Okay, anything else? I'm sure there will be something coming up. All right, if nothing else, then we will move to item 11, and I will declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.